less stress, more time, more money. Welcome to the Cash Flow Contractor. Interview.
Martin, what are the keys to a good pheasant hunt?
Pheasants.
Pheasants.
Yeah, you know what the real shortage right now is buying shotgun shells.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I bought 7 boxes last year in anticipation of slaughtering a bunch of pheasants, and I fired my gun once.
Yikes.
So I have those,
Yeah.
and then I know where a truck is coming tomorrow morning to deliver 2 3/4 inch 12 gauge 6-shot, and I will be there canceling appointments. So,
All right. Great.
So you're headed to Liberal, Kansas?
yeah, near Liberal, Kansas. Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe you'll.
Anybody want pheasants? Because
We'd love a
anybody
pheasant.
want pheasant?
Well, yeah, we'll take a pheasant.
Okay, because a lot of times I don't bring them home. I give them away because I don't really cook. But
Yeah.
No, we'll cook a pheasant.
okay,
Yeah, just don't put
you
too
cook
many.
6 of them.
No, I'll pick one of them, but don't just don't get too many BBs in it.
Well, I head shoot them all.
Yeah,
Yeah,
You're-
you don't want to mess up the meat. I shoot them in the head.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
You
Don't give us your
have to
bad
be
shots.
pretty good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. Well, I would love to hear, Martin, what you're going to be doing to make sure that you're safe on this pheasant hunt.
Well, you know, I really shouldn't ever kid about that.
No, you shouldn't.
With shotguns, hunt with guys I've hunted with for 40 years. And some of the things, and a prominent actor shot somebody here, you know, last week or 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And man, you just do not ever, point a gun at anybody, no matter what. Well, it's not loaded, you got your finger in the breech, I don't care, you just don't do it. And I think that's learned. But
Yeah, for sure. Well, there are a lot of safety things that you should do and shouldn't do that we're going to talk about today. Gary,
Oh.
thanks for
Hunter Orange, forgot that.
Hunter Orange.
Hunter
yeah.
Orange.
You have to
Yeah.
wear orange. I have to tell a joke real quickly before we get to
Okay.
Gary. But a lady in Wyoming pulled into a cafe and a bar. There were a bunch of guys in there with Hunter Orange on. She asked one of the guys, "Why is everybody wearing orange?" He said, "It's a state law, ma'am." She said, "What a good idea. I think drunks everywhere ought to have to wear orange." Anyway, okay, back to the
Yeah, easily spotted.
easily
Easily
spotted.
Easily spotted.
Gary, thanks for joining us on the podcast this morning.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. For those who don't know Gary, this is actually our second attempt, probably 3 months later, maybe longer.
At least.
Maybe longer.
Yeah, on trying to get a podcast recorded with Gary. Last time we did it, we did the full thing, but we had severe audio issues that wouldn't allow us to publish it. So thanks for coming back, Gary.
Hey, you bet.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. We know that you're in safety. Give us a little bit about your background.
All right. Gary Messec, my
Yeah.
name. And I just retired in 2020. I worked 33 years at a refinery. And in that refinery, I was an operator for 21 years. And then from 2009 till retirement, I was involved in safety. I was a training coordinator. I was a PSM operations specialist, process safety management. And basically that took care of all the mechanical safety aspects of the equipment and stuff. But I was also the training coordinator, training the operators, which is a requirement. And so I developed a training program. We did not have one before that time. And so then in 2006, while I was still working, we started a safety company, a business partner of mine, and he had retired earlier. And so we both enjoy safety and doing training. And so we started Southwest Safety Services.
That's where I met you.
That's right. And that's been 12,
About-
13 years ago, it seems
Yeah,
like.
at
A
least.
long time ago. But anyway, and so been doing safety training since 2000. And
Yeah.
I was also I'm a retired volunteer firefighter for the town I work in. I was a training officer for them and hazmat officer for that department as well. So
Very cool.
that's
And-
a little bit of my background.
And you say refinery, is that a metal refinery?
No, it's an oil and gas
Oil
refinery.
and gas refinery, okay.
Yeah, here in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
We
The
have
big lit up.
4 or 5 of them here.
Okay. Excellent. How did you first get into safety inside of that company? Was it something that you just fell into by happenstance, or
No,
you?
it was I started the doing safety training in 2000 for Technology Center.
Okay.
And we have technology centers all over the state, and they do offer safety training and stuff for different companies. And if you do training through them, you get a little discount on your workman's comp. Part of that money goes towards training. And so I was doing that and still an operator at the refinery.
Right.
And I could see where we were missing a lot of things. And
Which is probably where a lot of companies are, right?
Yeah.
They think they have safety down, but they're really missing a lot of things.
Yes, and training operators especially is one of the to make it safe for them, especially in the hostile environments you work in at a refinery.
Yeah.
We needed to do that a little better. So that's how I got interested, and opportunity came up, and we got a new safety manager there, and I said, hey, I'd like to do training. He said, all right. So that's how that happened.
So not self-taught, but
Interest.
self-taught. Yeah,
Self-motivated.
I mean, that caused you to go out and learn how to do it.
Yes,
Yeah.
I had been to several OSHA classes, trained the trainers, prior to that, learning how to deliver, what to deliver, how to do it accurately and correctly. And so I was a good fit, I thought, for that, and it
Good.
worked out real good.
That's great. I'm really curious about that safety program. And you said that you developed it for the refinery.
It was a training program.
Yeah, the training program.
Yes.
What goes into a training program, and how did you develop it? How long did that take?
It took it's still ongoing. It's evergreen. You don't ever
Sure.
stop. But you have to identify what you need. What are the needs? What do we have to do? We also have to look at what the OSHA reg says that we need to be able to supply folks so they can work safely.
Mm-hmm.
And based on that, procedures are something that's real big out there. Do you have a written procedure on how to do this particular job?
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to develop procedures that are written, that can be understood. You can also use pictures if everybody can understand the pictures and they're trained to.
Mm-hmm.
But having the procedures in place that they can refer to, they being your employees, how to do a job, how to do it correctly. That's where you start.
Yeah.
And then for us, it was on the pieces of equipment. How do you operate a pump? How do you operate an overhead fan? Those types of things, the pieces of equipment that they would be operating. So anybody out there, whatever the tools are that you're going to be using, you need to be able to understand how they work and the way to work with them safely. And so
Excellent.
it's just a progression.
Yeah. We talk about systems quite a bit on our podcast, and I think we don't call them procedures, but they're very similar in that there's a list of ways exactly what you need to do, how you need to do it, all that stuff. And I think, you're bringing up the point of using procedures for the point of safety, for keeping things, keeping us away from risks in our business and for risks for our employees. But I think systems work in the same way. They're reducing risk for you as a business owner, where you are not required to be on the job, and you can train someone to do something, and you can sell your business for something that's valuable, and kind of reduces your risk in the game. So I think that's interesting to note. With the training programs that you put in place there, I know that it's evergreen, but I'm just trying to think of companies that don't have a formal training program. What is the time investment into that? Is that something that you knock out in a month, or does that take years to develop?
It took years to develop.
Okay.
You start from the ground up, and anything that you can find that's already out there, the old saying, why try and reinvent the wheel?
Mm-hmm.
We had a sister refinery where they had worked on developing some of this stuff, so that I worked with the training coordinator.
Did you have to pay for them for that?
They had to pay for those initially.
And you guys just got them for free, essentially?
Basically,
Wow.
we did, but it was through the same company.
It's the same company. It was the same company.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
They had to pay to have someone come in and help them get established, and then I just worked with them on that. So.
Gotcha. Because I wonder if there's companies out there that can do that with companies that are same industry but different market. If they can just pull away some of the resources that they've invested in for safety programs.
If they are of owned by the same folks, that would probably be.
Yeah, but probably not. Maybe
probably
there's a way.
not the other way.
But maybe you can do that, like, hey, I'll pay you for your safety program, so that you're not investing so much money.
But
and
it is
time.
anytime you make that decision, there are publications on the OSHA website for startup companies that tell you, what you should do, what you need in place. And I keep mentioning OSHA. I'm sure everybody knows who OSHA is.
Why don't we go ahead and say what it is?
They're the government agency that regulates personal safety out there and makes sure that the people are safe with the regulations they have in place.
Occupational Safety and Health Administration.
That's exactly right.
And they have IMSA too for mines.
Mine safety,
Yeah.
yes. There's different federal agencies, FFA, or FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, and that sort of thing.
I'd love to hear the impact that the training program you put inside of the refinery, I guess you would measure it maybe by accidents per year or per month. What were you guys having before the program and then after?
Yeah, first and foremost, having the training before you put boots on the ground out in the field, the guys, what we received back from the people that were down there was, this is the way to go. These guys know so much when they get down here. We don't have to spend a lot of time just holding their hand and walking with them. They had the knowledge already. What is a heat exchanger? How does it work? What does a tower do? How do you stop a pump? I mean, that sounds elementary, but it's actually, there's a lot more to it than just going out there and starting pushing a button.
Well, that's one thing about a refinery. Things can get really serious really fast.
They can.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I won't bring it up, but not necessarily while you were there, but you've had some instances, haven't you?
There were a couple instances while I was there back in 2006, a major fire, but fortunately no injuries, no fatalities.
Wow.
We were good there, but and again, those things happen when you don't train people how to operate the equipment correctly.
Right.
If you can't learn by tribal knowledge and be accurate is the thing. So it helped us in that aspect.
Yeah. I'm curious, obviously nobody wants accidents to happen on the job site. They don't want anybody to get hurt. But does having these procedures and this program in place protect you legally if something were to happen?
Yes.
How so?
Okay. In the industry that I was in, we were regulated by OSHA. The PSM regulation 29 CFR 1910-119.
Yeah.
Did
everybody get that?
Yeah.
We'll put it in the show notes.
And there's 14 elements.
Everybody should know that one.
14 elements
It should just
of
be in the back of your
CFM
head.
2419.
Yeah.
Got it.
There's 14 elements that you have to follow, and procedures are part of that. And so what they want is, if you're going to go out and do any job, you have to have a procedure and you have to follow that procedure. If there's an accident that happens, I did incident investigations as well. We're going to investigate that procedure to make sure that it is accurate and that it is what it should be.
Yeah.
And we'll look at where the incident happened, and was it because we missed a step in the procedure? The majority of the time, no. But
Human error.
somebody taking a shortcut or something like that.
So when you talk about procedures, something like changing out a pump,
Well, shutting a pump down even. As simple as shutting a pump down, because
stars the downstream and something changes.
sure, yes, and you have to know about the product that's in there too. Is it hazardous? Is it flammable? Is it toxic? That sort of thing. And so anytime you start dealing with equipment, not only understanding the equipment, but what it's actually doing, and especially if it's a fluid mover, moving some type of fluid, what is that fluid? So that's, if you proceduralize it, you can follow step by step. Then when the procedures were made, the hazards were identified, and you eliminate the hazards as you shut down or start up, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So that's what a procedure is good for. And you write them to a point where, and it doesn't really happen this way, but you want to write it where, if I gave it to you, Khalil, today, you could actually go out there, maybe with a little direction, and follow that procedure. That's how you want it.
You want it to be that elementary.
You want it to be simple.
Yeah.
And but then you get involved with how many steps there might be and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But overall, it's just like, I'm going to kind of change shifts here.
Sure.
Anytime you get ready to do a job, for the folks listening, a JSA, job safety analysis, should be completed before you start your job.
What does that look like?
Okay, that's good. It's comprised of 3 items. It has, just think of it this way. What's the job and the tools required?
Okay.
What's the hazards involved with doing the job, with using the tools? And then how do we mitigate those hazards? And as the crew, you need to all be involved when you conduct a JSA, so everybody will have a say in what's going on.
Yeah.
And so there are forms out there, and well, here's the job. It involves these hand tools that we have to use, wrenches, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to shut down this pump,
Yeah.
okay, and take it apart. And so then with each element of what you're going to do,
Yeah.
you talk about the hazards to the crew and say, what are we going to do, guys, to mitigate these hazards? How are
Yeah.
we going to keep them from getting us? We have to shut the pump down. We have to block the suction valve, the discharge valve. We have to bleed this product down. What are those hazards? What do they involve? So knowing, in order to do that and do it accurately, you have to be trained on what job you're getting ready to do, right?
Yeah.
I have to understand this piece of equipment. I have to understand.
Does that happen in a classroom? I mean, we're not talking about the tailgate meeting.
No,
This is
it's going to be classroom, and then you can do a tailgate meeting
Right,
once.
to review or something.
But you need to understand the basics, and that's typically classroom training.
Okay. I'm curious here, and I know this is just the first step of a process that you were about to outline, that you do this JSA. But let's just focus on this for a second.
Okay.
Who is responsible for this? Is this I know that you're talking about a refinery here a little bit, but let's even move into more construction-based, where maybe we're a home builder, or maybe we're a framing contractor, or a plumber, or whatever it is. Is it the sub that's responsible for their crew? Is it the GC that's responsible for all the subs doing this? What does that look like?
The GC is over the subs. He's actually the one that hires them, right?
Right.
And so he is responsible for them, but the subs also are responsible to be on the same level of training
Okay.
as the GC, okay? And so
I would love to hear from your perspective, Gary, because of my perspective, what percentage of contractors do you think are doing this? Because from my perspective, I'm thinking like, man, you are in the top 1%.
Yeah.
If you're doing this.
I don't.
I agree it's the right thing.
I would say that there's probably 50 to 70%,
Okay.
depending upon the industry.
Sure.
What industry
Well,
you're
I'd say
in.
in refineries, I've been waiting to say this, but everything you've been talking about sounds really expensive.
It is.
And depending on who you are,
Yeah.
I mean, what size you are,
Yep.
it's just normally, I've been on locations with some machines where you couldn't even go on the location until you finished 2 days of classroom provided by the contractor, I don't know, the GC or what, but you had to you couldn't even go out there.
Right.
And
Right.
so then you had to go through all that. There's some guys digging a trench right outside our window here. I mean, I always notice things like, what do you call the liners for trenches?
Trench box.
Trench blocks,
Yeah.
yeah. And I was kind of going, I don't know, they look like they're doing all right. They're wearing vests and stuff. But I would guess it's, for small contractors, it's vastly less than 50%.
Yeah.
Yes, and
I mean-
that's true.
And
probably.
that's one of the things, we've got all kinds of people listening, but that's one of the things that I really like to tend to by the time we get to the end is if you're just 3 guys, you still got to do it, or you and 2 guys.
There's if you're self-employed or you have less than 10 employees, it's not quite as strict. But the thing is, for me, if you're going to put someone in a situation where they're working in a hazardous job,
Yeah.
regardless of whether it's 2 employees or 2,000, they need to be trained and understand what those hazards are and how to mitigate them. Can we eliminate every single hazard? The answer is no. But if we talk about them, if we understand them, then we know how to work with those hazards.
Yeah.
It may have to do with the PPE, the personal protective equipment that we wear. It may have to do with some type of interaction with a piece of equipment, but everybody understands what it's getting ready to do and that sort of thing. But if you talk about the hazards, if you understand the equipment, and I know it's easy for me to say, but whether you got 3 employees or 300, 3,000, you should think of it the same way. We want our folks to go home at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
That's what we're all concerned with. And so some of these things do cost money to do, to get, to maintain. But once you have the program in place, it's fairly easy to keep it going if you dedicate yourself to that.
Kind of a more upfront cost to get started, and then you can just have a smaller investment that you're continuing to put in to renew it and keep it up to date.
And I think for the folks out there listening, the technology centers offer that.
Which we call technology centers. A lot of places they're VOTECs.
They changed the name to Technology Center probably 20 years ago.
Yeah, here in Oklahoma, but I think they still call them.
But they used to be called VOTECs. But
Yeah.
like for instance, Mid-America Technology Center at Wayne. There's Francis Tuttle up here. But those are good resources for businesses, small or large, and they can help you. And the price per hour of training is fairly inexpensive.
Okay.
It really is.
Very good.
And they have, I'm going to say, for the most part, they have good trainers.
And I know that contractors are thinking that a big barrier here is actually language, especially for some of their subs. Are the VOTECs and the Career Center or the technology centers offer bilingual training?
They do.
Okay.
They do.
And then I'm assuming important for your procedures to be both in English and Spanish, right?
Yes. And that's any time that you have multiple languages, signage should read that way as well. Any type of safety signs that you have, any type of information, you need to be able to have it in the languages that the people speak.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So let's go back. You said you were on the track of explaining a process. You said a JSA, job safety
analysis, job hazard analysis. They have different names.
Sure.
But
so that's the first thing you're going to do when you get on a job site? Or before you even get to the job site?
Ideally, no. Well, when you get there to the job site and you're looking over the job, fill out a JSA about the job you're getting ready to do. Even if you do the same job every day.
Yeah.
What causes most accidents out there?
Probably falls.
Lack of awareness.
Well, complacency.
Oh, okay.
I do this job day in, day out, and so you have to be disciplined even when you do a JSA. If you're doing the same job you do every day, you have to be disciplined not to skip over something. But if it's a job you don't do every day, they're really important. It really helps you identify the hazards. What are the hazards, and how can we mitigate those hazards?
Can you give us some examples of hazards? Because I think, I know the obvious ones, like the equipment could fall on top of you and you could die, but what are some of the smaller ones that people don't even, think about?
Well, one of the biggest things is energy isolation, hazardous energy isolation. We call it lockout, tagout, but there's all different types of hazardous energy out there that can get loose and cause us injury, harm, or death. And so we have to understand how to isolate the piece of equipment, and then we have to dissipate that hazardous energy. Most commonly, we think about electricity, right? But there's also thermal, there's also hydraulic. Thermal, temperature, cold or hot, hydraulic, fluid under pressure, pneumatic, air under pressure. Those are the hazards that are out there. Some pieces of equipment may have more than one of those, right? So in that JSA, I have electric driver here. I've got a motor driving this thing. So I have electricity. Then if I shut this pump down and it's full of something that's flammable and toxic, I have that hazard to deal with. If it's hot or if it's cold, I have to deal with that. Hazards that you need to think about also, pinch points. If you're going to be twisting a valve, if you're going to be using a wrench, pinch points, those things that get your hands. If you reach around blind with your hand, that's where you can't see really where you are. What is back there? What am I going to do? How am I going to do that safely? because a lot of times we'll put ourselves right in the line of fire and have an injury. But other hazards, again, thermal, especially with the winter time coming on, the cold is going to be a big issue.
Yeah.
Winter safety is always a good thing to talk about, but what does metal do when it gets down freezing and stuff? It gets really cold, and you can actually, grab hold of something, be stuck to it, that sort of thing. So
Wow.
if there's any moisture at all,
Yeah.
so things to think about. So
Yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah, there's a lot of hazards, and that's why if we, as a group, if us three were going to do a job, we sit here and talk about it. We fill out that JSA, identify the hazards and what we're going to do to
So you have a
protect ourselves.
JSA form that has a lot of questions on it and check boxes to remind you what
You
to
bet,
look at.
you bet.
Yeah.
And
So that's part of the
and
process.
you can get those forms online anywhere. Just Google JSA form and boom, there you go. Again, why reinvent the wheel?
Right.
I think the key thing with that JSA is the awareness piece.
It is.
I think when you're, especially if you're doing the same job every day, you'd know what's going on that form.
Yep.
But just to take a moment and be aware of it. I mean, it's just like anything in life. If you want to know where you're going, you've got to have a goal. And
That's
if you're aware of that goal, you're more likely to reach it.
Yep.
If our goal is safety and we're aware of what the hazards are and how we can safely get to the end goal, then we're going to be better about it. So I really like that idea. And honestly, it's a good idea in practice for not just construction, but anything you go on
I think,
with.
anything, even
Yeah.
in, like you said, in life. Even
Yeah.
if you're getting ready to drive somewhere,
Yeah.
should you do an inspection on your car, on your vehicle? Should
Sure.
you check the air? Should you make sure you got gas, that sort of thing, and then check, the direction we're going. Do we have construction on Interstate 35? Only from start to finish. That's
Yeah.
all. So,
I do all those things before I go anywhere.
yeah.
Well, maybe I don't.
My father-in-law says never get a major repair on your car before a road trip. They might mess it up.
That's where they need the wrench in.
That might be where you have the problem. Drive around town a little bit first.
But everything you do, and one thing I like to stress too, and I do to everybody when I do training, all these things we talk about, you can take home and use them as well.
Mm-hmm.
Ladder safety, hearing protection, eye protection, that sort of thing. You can use them at home and should use them at home as well.
Yeah. So once you have this JSA in place, what are some of the other safety procedures that you can go through?
Well, with the JSA, hopefully you're going to cover everything
Right.
for that particular job. And if you're working for someone, if you're a contractor for someone, you need to be aware of what they require. What do they expect? What are their expectations? And make sure that you meet those too. If your procedures, if your written formats are above and beyond what they have, that's fine, but you can't do anything less than what they have, what they require. So you need to really understand and be aware of what they require as well. That's very important.
Yeah.
Because you don't want them to come by and say, hey, why aren't you wearing a fall protection, your harness and your, well, I'm only 4 feet off the ground. Well, we require you to have that at 4 feet, so you need to do that. Oh, okay, so things like that, little things like that can creep up, but understand what's expected of you. So that's.
So you fill out the JSA. You're doing the job. Were there like checkpoints that you go around and do safety checks or anything like that need to be in place?
There may be.
Okay.
That could happen that way, but most commonly we've discussed and identified, if we're going to get a piece of equipment ready, this is what we're going to do. We're going to shut down the electricity part of it. We're going to trip a breaker over here. Okay, and we'll go look at it while we're doing the JSA. And then we're going to isolate the pump. We're going to shut the suction and the discharge, and we'll point those out.
Yeah.
And then we'll have a discussion, and then we'll start the job. And if we have to, we can always reference it because we're going to have it right there with us as well.
And then post-job, are you filling out any forms like, hey, we met all the measures, or no?
Typically
unless there's an
not.
accident.
Typically not, but now if you have a procedure, there's usually a how to bring something down and a procedure how to take it up. I'm not saying you have to everywhere. I'm just a procedure guy. I know how that works. But if you have the JSA, just reverse what you're doing. You know? we've identified these hazards. We knew we had to shut the pump down. We knew we had to isolate it. Now that we're done, if we're going to be the ones doing it, we'll just go the reverse of that.
Gotcha.
And it's good, again, to talk about how are we going to do it? How are we going to do it? You can't communicate enough when you start doing this stuff.
Yeah. I would love to hear some examples of, man, I think a lot of people don't know how important safety is in the day-to-day of their role. They understand that, yes, safety is important, but they don't understand how things can go wrong really fast all the time, especially in their role. So I'd love to hear some examples of maybe sometimes things just went wrong for a company, and maybe that was the catalyst for them bringing you in to start implementing a procedure or a program for safety.
I'll go over one most recent, and it's not a bad situation. Nobody was hurt or anything, but it was a situation where a company here locally was audited by the Department of Environmental Quality, ODEQ. Okay, and they had some findings, and the company was very nervous. We thought we were doing good, and we need some help here. So I went in and helped them out with some environmental issues, some training that they were laxed on, and we got that done, plus the other things that they gathered that were required. And in about a 6-week period, we sent all the stuff into ODEQ, and they got back a clean bill of health. So everything went well there. So, but they were really nervous. But if you get the help you need in those situations, typically, based on what the findings were, you can work them out, because they'll work with you. And if you put the effort out, they're gonna work with you. That's just an example of what happened here recently.
Gotcha.
Things that went south. There was an incident on a location, an oil well location, where 2 companies that I trained for both of them. One of them was lifting a piece of equipment with a crane. The other company, one of the guys, was wanting to help them. They didn't ask him for the help.
Steady it or something.
Huh?
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So, and he was there to do another job. This is company A, this is company B. Company A is lifting this pumping unit, piece of a pumping unit, big iron beam. The guy from company B comes over, tries to help him. He gets pinched in between that beam and the ground and causes some injury to the pelvic area and his leg and stuff. And so that kind of thing, shouldn't happen. Everybody, unless somebody asks you to help them, don't go help them.
Yeah.
Because that's not your specialty. That's not your forte.
You're not trained in it.
And so I did incident investigation on that, and of course, and I trained for both these companies. They didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
And but this company was at fault. He should have never
Walked over to
gone.
help, and he thought he was doing something good.
Right. He did, and that was his whole intention anyway. And it wasn't to speed things up. He just thought they needed some help, but they didn't. They knew what they were doing. And so with that, we had to train those folks
To stay on their job
stay
site.
on your job,
Yeah.
do what you do, that sort of thing. That's another small example of what can happen and how fast it can happen. I mean, he went over there and talking to folks. Within 3 or 4 seconds, he was hurt.
Wow.
Just that quick.
So and I'm curious, is that on the company or is that on the individual in that case?
Well, that will be on the company
Wow.
he works for. Yeah. It'll be an injury that they'll have to record on their OSHA 300 log.
Let's talk
That's
about
right.
OSHA 300.
Yeah.
It's Martin's favorite thing.
One of the things I do with virtually every company is say, "Can I see your Form 300?" And almost universally, I'm like, "What?" So why does that matter, Gary?
You have to record it.
What is it, and why does it matter?
It's an OSHA form, and you have to record any injury information. Is it a recordable injury? That has to do with what treatment was given. If they went to the emergency room and they got stitches, if they were given a prescription, that sort of thing, that becomes recordable, and OSHA wants to know about those. Other injuries are what they call non-recordable, but you still have to put them down. I'll give you an example that I found. I didn't know this until it happened. We had an individual chip a tooth, a hose fitting hit him and chipped the tooth, that's a broken bone. A tooth is a bone.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't know that.
According to OSHA, anyway.
Yeah. So that was a recordable.
Right.
And so anyway, it's a form that you need to maintain, you need to have. If there's any regulators that do come in, just like Martin said, they're going to ask to see that.
Yeah.
Another thing too, talking about injury rate and such, it can affect you getting jobs as a contractor, somebody wanting to do a job. A lot of companies want to know what your injury rate is, and and that may prevent you from getting work, getting a job. Also, as we know, when we have an injury, what does that do to us as a company?
Yeah.
Depending upon how many, the insurance rates may change. But more important than that, we have an employee that's hurt. We didn't want that. That employee may not be able to work for days or weeks. So now we have to gather up the forces that we have to cover his job. And so, it's a circle, and it can be a vicious circle at times, but there's a lot of things that happen. So that's another reason why it's important and a good responsibility for the owners of these companies to have a good safety training program.
Yeah.
Because it can help prevent those injuries and those things happening.
Sure. I think it's typically the companies that have been in business longer, that are bigger, that start to kind of figure these things out, that maybe have had the audit that prompted them to get the safety program in place, or get a safety trainer hired to do something quarterly or biannually or whatever it is.
There's a lot of companies that I do training for that we train every month.
Wow.
But there are companies that do quarterly training or biannually training.
Yeah.
The thing is, if you'll do JSAs each job, you're doing some training there.
Yeah.
I know that it's hard and difficult sometimes to get everybody in somewhere once a month, but even if you could get 3/4 of the crew there, or half the crew this month and then half the next
Just
month.
on rotation.
And it's very important too for documentation. Make sure that they sign in. Make sure that that you can read their name. It's legible. I know that sounds funny, but first thing that OSHA is going to ask too is if you had training, and we want to see the roster to verify that. So those are things that you need to do and record. If your name's not there, you weren't there.
Yeah.
Is the way that we always say it.
So we've said that for these smaller companies, the technology centers are probably a great resource for them. But you've also mentioned the OSHA website having some resources. What are some of the things that they might be able to find on there that are helpful?
There is a plethora of information on the OSHA website, and you can get bogged down real easy, but the standards are there. But there's one publication, I happened to write it down, and it's, let's see, it's Training Requirements and OSHA Standards, and it's only 256 pages long, but it gives you all the training that's required by all the OSHA standards.
And it's kind of you don't have to know everything about all 256 pages. There's part of, we dig trenches, we work in the air, we're in a confined space, we're an office, and you can go in there and kind of.
And you can weed through that, you sure can. There's also the publication for startup business, new business. And a lot of people think OSHA is out to get us, and it's really not. They're there to protect the workers, right?
Yeah.
And it is a government agency. It came about in 1970 with the OSHA Act, and it's been around a long time.
Yeah.
But there are numerous publications that you can use for training. You can pull things off. They've got what they call quick cards for trenching and shoring, forklift safety, lockout, tagout. And it's just a quick card that has the basics on it.
Yeah.
Someone don't use that for your primary training, but once you've been trained, then this is just a refresher.
It's a curriculum.
Yeah. And so make sure that you understand that part. But there's a lot of good information there. But the technology centers are a great resource as well.
Okay.
One thing, maybe the technology centers, we didn't do it that way. We used you, but all as I'm listening to all of this and thinking about a bunch of my clients, maybe 10 to 25 employees, busier than heck, got all the issues you've got. We have the advisor and mentor checklist that we refer to all the time. I'm saying, guys, hire Gary. I mean, do that, because even though you can get all that material, what material am I supposed to get? Somebody who can make order out of chaos and say, okay, we're going to implement this over time. We can't do it all in one day, but here's where you start. When you came into us, there was bloodborne pathogens, and that's like everybody's got to take that, right?
Yep.
Well, I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
And confined space, certain circumstances, getting in an empty swimming pool is confined space.
Sure.
And you're thinking, no, it's not. Well, yeah, it is.
Based on the definition for a confined
And I was
space.
at a client's not too long ago, and he's got some 3,500 gallon rosin tanks with, anyway, the sediments get in there. Lowering a guy in there, and they were bucketing that out. They go, man, anyway, you can't do that.
No. You can't.
Well, why not? Well, he's a little guy. He fits through that hole. I go, no. How are you going to get him out of there? And anyway, did you check the O2
Atmosphere.
levels and all that?
Atmosphere,
And I said, well, what? So you can freak people out so easily.
Yeah.
But if you just start with one thing, to me, you want a maestro orchestrating this, and if it's not going to be the boss, and not asking you to price stuff, but if you were doing that, kind of guiding a program, what would that cost somebody? What would somebody expect to pay for some advisor?
An hourly rate, 75 to 150 an hour.
So if they're going to spend $1,000 a month, or to start out with, and maybe a little less. Or,
Yeah, probably a little less.
Okay. See, I mean, that's totally affordable.
Yeah.
It's totally affordable.
Yeah. And I think employees care about that stuff too. As sometimes it does seem redundant, sometimes it does seem so elementary. Why are we doing this? But at the end of the day, if you communicate it the right way, I think employees feel invested, and they feel like you care about them, and that you're not just trying to send them to work and get the job done, but you're trying to take care of them too.
That's a great point, Khalil, and you want buy-in with the employees too.
Yeah.
And it starts from the top. I promise you it does. If the top doesn't support that, then it's not going to happen. But you have to have that, and you definitely want the employee buy-in. And like you say, especially starting a new program, the guys that have been working, let's say, 15 years, and I know all that. I don't need to be taught that. But and so sometimes you have a challenge trying to win those guys over, but eventually it'll happen if you can present it correctly and visit with them, talk to them. It'll work out.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, man, I think that this is a topic that, we have a lot of these. We've done this with legal too, that people, it's not the first thing that's on mind, but it is something that is extremely important. And something we haven't talked about is what the initial investment actually saves you in the long run. It is an expense up front.
It is.
But what are the expenses that it's saving you on in the future? Maybe you could talk about that. Maybe there's some examples of, you've seen it where a company didn't have the thing in place. They did have the lawsuit or the fine, and this is what, they had to pay this. I think that would be helpful for people to know.
Okay, a good example is a utilities company. They had a fatality several years ago, and so David and I went in and we did training for them.
Oh, training.
Trenching and shoring training, and to this day the company, we still train for them, and they're huge. They've got a big workforce, and they do a lot of work, but safety is paramount with that company. And again, the negatives when you have injuries and you're not safe: no work, or hard to get work, insurance rates are high, and employees will leave if you're not working them. They're not going to stay there.
I mentioned before we started, I had a client here in Oklahoma who cleared rights of way, pipelines, power lines, railroad rights of way, sometimes highways and so on. And it's tough business, can pay real well, but they had accident problem, and their workers' comp rate was too high.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of that, they couldn't work for 3 of the largest clients that they had. I mean, just about wiped them out.
Yep.
And the man investigated and actually did create another company saying, well, we'll shut that down. Well, that follows you.
Yeah.
You can't start it. Well, you can start another company and think you're going to get away with it, but they want to know joint owners and things, and they go back. So it didn't put them out of business, but it easily could have.
Yep.
And I don't know how long it took, 3 years to make that. I don't remember, but for that to wash out,
Yeah.
that high rate.
Probably 3 years if they didn't have any
Anything
other
else?
occurrences.
Yeah.
It hurts you in a lot of different ways. And the main thing I want to make sure people understand, you don't want anybody to get hurt.
Yeah, that's the primary.
You don't want someone to get hurt. You want them to be able to continue to work. And some injuries, they cause you to go on disability. Those things happen. And so that should be, what we think about up front, number one. Let's don't get anybody hurt. And we have to focus that way. And it's real simple. How do we do that? Well, we have to train them on the job we want them to do.
Yeah.
That's our responsibility. The general clause in OSHA, right at the very front, it says employers will make work conditions safe for their employees.
Mm.
And if they can't get you anywhere else, they can
Get
come
you
and
on
get
that.
you on that. But then the second part of that is the employees will work safely. I'm paraphrasing.
Right.
But
Sure.
employees will work safely. But they can only work safely if we train them how to work safely.
Right.
Yeah, and give
You
them
know.
the environment to do so.
One thing we talk about recurring, we've said this sounds expensive, and it is, but we've shown by hiring an advisor and doing it piecemeal, it's not prohibitively expensive, and you have to do it anyway. But the other thing is you have to bid this stuff. If you're lowballing bids, which we talk about all the time, trying to get the work, and you don't have it in there, you will cut corners. You will. Well, we don't have time to do that. What do you mean to spend 45 minutes every morning with 12 guys around a pickup? I can't afford that. Excuse me. Can't afford that. So that's just a message. You have to bid that way. If you're a contractor, this is part of it. And if you're ignoring it, it will catch up to you. Either somebody gets hurt or the inspector walks in and wants to see your Form 300 and you say, my what?
Yeah.
Get
Yeah.
off my property. You can't come on
yeah.
here. Well, yeah, I can.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
You had mentioned an audit. You've actually mentioned it a couple of different times. What does an audit look like? I think that there are contractors out there that are worried about an OSHA audit.
Yep.
How does that come about? What do you need to have prepared? Just kind of give us the rundown.
Sometimes you'll get a warning if there's going to be an audit. Sometimes not. One way it happens is employee complaints. You have when you go to that OSHA website, OSHA.gov, there is also directions on how to file a complaint. And no retaliation against that person is allowed either. That's one way.
Wow.
And probably one of the most common ways that an audit will occur.
Okay. Do you get warning on that one, or still
Sometimes
you don't know?
you
Okay.
might, you might not.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to say for the most part, you're going to get warned that there's going to be an audit most of the time, but they can come in without.
Unprompted, yeah.
And then during the audit, they're going to ask for a lot of information. Have the folks been trained?
Where's
And
your
if so,
evidence of
let
that?
me see it. I want to see the sign-in sheets. I want to see the tests, or how you conveyed the information to them, that sort of thing. Because whatever you put out there, they have to be able to give you information back, right?
Yeah.
So typically, that's how we do a test. They're going to ask to see your OSHA 300. They're going to do you have procedures in place? And if so, let's see those procedures.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things, and what you want to do is let them ask you. Don't you offer, just let them ask you, and then you can go from there. But they're going to find something if there's an audit, I'll say that. They may not find you initially. It may be like the company I spoke about earlier, where the ODEQ came in different from OSHA. but environmental has got a lot of stroke, and if you comply with the recommendations they made and that sort of thing, put the effort out there, they're usually going to work with you on that. Where it really gets sticky is if it's ongoing, if it's happened once, twice, 3 times, and you haven't fixed what's causing it, then you can get ready for some fines and stuff.
Do those fines impact your insurance rates as well?
They impact your pocketbook bottom line.
Sure.
The fines won't, but if you
The
have
incident will. Yeah.
the incident will.
Is it only incident? I just didn't know if it was only incidents that were going to cause your insurance to go up, or if they find something in the audit, oh, now your insurance goes up.
Yeah.
So.
That'll be all based on the injury rate and stuff.
Gotcha. Okay.
You bring that up. At the company where I worked with you, insurance guys, some insurance companies will come in and help you
They
design
will.
a safety program.
Sure will.
And
They
if
sure
you get
will.
good people there. So there are a lot of resources.
Yep.
Um,
And I would say to the folks out there, just make some calls. Don't think it's going to be crazy, outrageous.
yeah,
and that
don't
sort of thing.
self-deselect. Go
Yeah.
find out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just make some calls, call some folks, and see, let them know what you need, what you're thinking, and work with them that way.
Yeah.
The benefits are so good. Again, I can't stress enough. Number one, if we get our workforce to work safe, they're all going to go home at the end of the day, and that's what we want. Production is better. OSHA injury log, we have less injuries, so chances for more jobs, that sort of thing. Insurance rates down. There's so many benefits to a safe workforce.
It just came to mind that there are people who cannot be safe, and they need to not work for you.
That's true.
I had a guy
That's
named
true.
Dutch when I ran grain elevators in Nebraska, and that guy, he would fall down standing on the, I can't describe it, but I'll tell you guys afterwards. Stupidest thing. Well, I will. We had a sheet metal building that had a hole in it. So one guy went on one side and held a sledgehammer against it, and the other guy bent that over and tapped the to close the hole, take the little flap and close it.
Yeah.
Dutch had he's up 15 feet on a ladder, and he had the sledgehammer in front of his face. And the guy tapped it, and it's like those balls, where click, click.
Yeah.
It goes, hits him in the head. The ladder, it wasn't funny at the time. He came to the office just covered with blood. The ladder slid down the side of this building, and he crashed, I go, really? Really? Do I need to put that as do not hold the hammer in front of your face when somebody's going to tap on it? But anyway, I finally had to let him go. Literally, I don't know why that is, but I've known other people like that. But
Yes, there are.
cannot work safely.
There are folks
Cannot.
out there. Yeah, that's true.
I don't know if it's lack of awareness or what it is, but
It's a good interview question. Have you been in any incidents?
yeah.
Yeah.
Safety wise.
Yeah, are you really stupid when it comes to safety? No.
Any car accidents in your
Yeah,
history?
yeah.
Maybe you can't ask that kind of stuff. But well, Gary, this has been super informative. How can people get in touch with you?
My phone number is 405-207-7334.
Okay, we'll put that in the show notes for people.
And then my email is Gary@swsafetyllc.com.
swsafetyllc.com.
Yep.
Okay.
And you can get hold of me either way.
Okay.
I may not answer the phone initially,
Yeah.
but call right back if I see 2
'Cause
calls.
you'll be at a country music concerts where you'll be.
I will be. I'll
Yeah,
be.
you'll be checking out the plugs on electric guitars.
Yep, I do
Making it,
that.
woo, that's not grounded.
Yep. I'm just really trying to get them to teach me how to play.
There
There
you
you
go.
go.
Do you play guitar?
I play just very little.
Very little.
I just
That's
started
cool.
after I retired, so
Okay.
but I'm learning.
Electric, acoustic.
Acoustic.
Okay.
Should have gone with electric. It's
You think so?
easier to play than acoustic.
It
but
is a little bit.
Anyway.
It's easier to press down and all that stuff.
Yeah, but I'm working towards that. I've got
That's
a couple
awesome.
good friends that play, and they say we need to get you playing songs and stuff. I'm doing all the chords and all the
Yeah.
things like that. But anyway, we
Don't-
love music. We go.
Don't tighten those strings too much.
That's right.
So safety
It
hazard.
is.
Safety
They'll
hazard.
snap, right?
Yeah.
Goodness.
And wrap around you.
Yeah.
Well, this has been super helpful. I think the biggest takeaways that I have for people, just to kind of recap, are safety is of the utmost importance. At the end of the day, the goal of it is to get your employees home safely. Big takeaways are also that technology centers are a great resource for training and a cost-effective solution at that. You have to look into a JSA, a job safety analysis or job hazard analysis.
Job hazard and that they have different names. Same thing.
But every single job, go through a JSA with your crew, and there needs to be classroom training for those as well. Even if it's redundant, that's sometimes the most important because you get complacent.
That's right.
Then also, OSHA's website has great resources for you. We've listed a couple in here that are down in the show notes if you want to get after them, but one's for startups and one's an entire guide that's 256 pages.
Right, the training that's required for the OSHA standards.
Exactly. Anything else I'm missing here on the recap?
Only that talk to somebody like Gary.
Talk to somebody like Gary.
To lead you through it, and because you can get all fired up, maybe because you heard this wonderful podcast, and you're and then you kind of wanders away and off you go.
Yeah.
It needs to be somebody. Safety director in your business is fantastic, but a lot of people don't have
that.
Yeah.
And they'll have a foreman that does multiple roles, and OSHA has an OSHA 30 class for it goes over all the safety hazards and stuff, and if you're in a supervisor position or you handle some safety, it's a good class to have. They have it for general industry 1910 and construction 1926, either one. They also have a 10-hour class as well that's an awareness level, but the 30-hour is a little more involved for supervisory and those that may deal with safety. Good class to go to.
Okay.
You can learn a lot in that.
That's great. Well, super valuable, man. Thank you for all your help. People will get in touch with you if they have questions, and we'll maybe bring you on again sometime.
Great. And the thing is, if I don't have an answer, I will direct you to where you can get one.
Perfect.
Okay. And,
fantastic. And OSHA is not your enemy.
OSHA is not your
enemy.
That's
another takeaway.
And
sometimes it may seem that way, and I've experienced a lot with OSHA where I used to work, and because we had some major events, but in the end, it's going to make you a better company anyway.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. All right,
but if
Gary,
we do the work up front, they won't come by.
Yeah, they won't. There you go.
That's right.
That's right.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Gary. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you asking me.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to The Cash Flow Contractor. Check out our website in the show notes or visit thecashflowcontractor.com.